live in interesting times. Today's stories. Syria Kurds call on the international community to stop the Turkish offensive. 41 migrants are found alive in a refrigerated truck in Greece. Separatists protest in Barcelona as Spain's king visits. Iran marks the 1979 embassy siege with an anti-US fervor. A climate expert warns US withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord is, quote, harmful. Chairman Schiff warns subpoenaed witnesses after two of them are no-shows in the impeachment probe. O'Brien warns against intimidation in the South China Sea at the ASEAN Summit. Plus, in Southern California, Thousand Oaks Community Center provides shelter for Morea fire victims. This is Eagle News, coming to you from New York, bringing you stories from around the globe. And I am Jennifer Polentan. Top Kurdish foreign affairs official Abdul Kareem Omar held a press conference in the Syrian border town of Kamashili, calling on the international community to stop Turkish attempts to change the demography of the border region with its offensive as Kurdish protesters stage a sit-in against Ankara's assault.
تحاول اليوم جلب سكان من غير المناطق المذكورة وتوطينهم هناك وللأسف بالتنسيق مع الأمم المتحدة والمجتمع بغية تحقيق أهداف سياسية بحتة الغاية منها تغيير هوية المنطقة بشتى الوسائل وإجراء التغيير الديموغرافي تحت حجة إعادة اللاجئين، حيث لا زلنا نأمل من المؤسسات الدولية وخاصة الأمم المتحدة إدانة هذا العدوان والضغط على تركيا للانسحاب من المناطق التي احتلتها وإيقاف هذه التجاوزات الغير أخلاقية والغير قانونية والمتعارضة تماما مع كل المواثيق والعهود الدولية.
Greek police found 41 migrants alive in a refrigerated truck in the north of the country and arrested the driver. The migrants, of apparent Afghan origin, were mostly in good condition, but 7 received first aid in a hospital. A police source said, quote, the truck contained men and boys. Identifying their nationality will require a couple of days. The truck was stopped by police on the Egnatia motorway between the towns of Xanthi and Komotini. The driver, a man from Georgia, was arrested. Local media reported that police were also seeking a second man from Turkey in connection with the incident. The discovery came after 39 people, all believed to be Vietnamese nationals, were found dead in a refrigerated truck in Britain last month, highlighting the risks of illegal migrants' routes to Europe, even for those avoiding perilous travel by sea. Greece is experiencing its highest asylum seeker arrival figures since 2016, when a controversial deal between the European Union and Turkey stemmed previous flows of nearly 1 million people. Scores arrive daily, overwhelming camps on Greek islands, facing Turkey, where over 34,000 people are staying, most of them in deplorable living conditions. State agency ANA said a 2-year-old girl from Iraq died Monday when she was hit by a car on the island of Chios. Several thousand Catalan protesters massed in Barcelona on Monday, seeking to disrupt a visit by King Philippe VI, as the country barreled towards another election under the shadow of separatist crisis. After weeks of soaring tensions in Spain's protest-hit northeast region, triggered by the Supreme Court's jailing of 9 separatist leaders last month, security was tight for the royal visit, during which the monarch gave awards to talented youths. Gathered in the city, several thousand people rallied with manners of banners and slogans, including "Death to the Bourbon Monarchy" and "Barcelona will be the nightmare of Philippe VI." Some held up signs in English, saying the Spanish king is not welcome in Catalonia, while others carried upside-down pictures of the king. Reports say since Philippe's arrival on Sunday, security has been tight, with a large number of forces deployed around the venue where the award ceremonies was taking place, and police cutting off one of the city's main roads. King Philippe VI drew the ire of Catalan separatists 2 years ago when, at the height of the crisis, he sternly denounced the independence bid and urged authorities to, quote, ensure constitutional order. His intervention came just days after the region staged a referendum barred by Madrid, which was marred by police violence, and later issued a short-lived independence declaration, triggering Spain's worst political crisis in decades.
Perquè no és el nostre rei, perquè ell va decidir no ser el nostre rei quan el 3 d'octubre del 17 va fer un discurs en què va ignorar totalment més de 1.000 persones que van patir lesions durant l'1 d'octubre. Recolza tot i no vol entendre que aquesta situació el poble està demanant que no la pot aguantar.
The current standoff has been a dominant theme in the run-up to Sunday's election, the fourth in as many years, which surveys suggest will give a boost to the far-right Vox, which is likely to come in third place. With anti-American slogans and effigies mocking President Donald Trump, thousands rallied outside the former U.S. Embassy in Tehran on Monday to mark the 40th anniversary of the Iran hostage crisis. Rallies also took place in several other cities 4 decades to the day after revolutionary students stormed the complex and seized dozens of American diplomats and embassy staff, an event that still strains ties. The head of the army, General Abdul said in a speech in Tehran, quote, they will continue their enmity against us. They are like a lethal scorpion whose nature is to have a poisonous sting.
برای له کردن این عقرب جرار زیر پا ایستادیم و هزینه آن را هم خواهیم پرداخت آنچنان که تاکنون پرداخته ایم.
He slammed the idea of interacting with the United States as a ruse, echoing recent remarks by Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Mousavi said words like negotiation are a, quote, gift wrapping, hiding the discourse of submission and defeat, adding that the only way forward is to maintain the revolutionary spirit through prudence and obeying the leader. Replica missiles and the same type of air defense battery used to shoot down a U.S. drone in June were put on display outside the former embassy turned museum in Tehran. Iranians massed in front of the building carrying placards with slogans such as "Down with the USA" and "Death to America."
از نظر رفاه امنیت حرف اولو میزنیم و آمریکا دنبال اینه که ما رو مثل سوریه، مثل عراق، مثل کشورهای دیگه زیر سوال ببره و ما رو ببره زیر استعمار. ولی ما به لطف رهبری و امام زمان این مملکت هیچ جوره نمیتونن ما رو زیر ظلم و ستم ببرن.
Rallies were also reported in the cities of Mashhad, Shiraz, and Esfahan, among others. State TV aired segments of a Canadian documentary titled The Fire Breather, showing Trump's controversial 2016 campaign trail, the highlights and biting comments about his past alongside images of the rallies. On November 4, 1979, less than 9 months after the toppling of Iran's American-backed Shah, students overran the embassy complex to demand the United States hand over the ousted ruler after he was admitted to a U.S. hospital. It took 444 days for the crisis to end, with the release of the last 52 Americans, but the U.S. broke off diplomatic relations with Iran in 1980, and ties have been frozen ever since. The 40th anniversary comes at a time of escalating tensions between Tehran and Washington, and also the region. Up next, a climate expert warns U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord is, quote, harmful. Chairman Schiff warns subpoenaed witnesses after 2 of them are no-shows at the impeachment probe. O'Brien warns against intimidation in the South China Sea at the ASEAN Summit. Plus, in Southern California, Thousand Oaks Community Center provides shelter from Morea fire victims. Eagle News will return shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Eagle News coming to you from New York, and I am Jennifer Polintan. Climate expert David Waskow warned that the United States' formal withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord is, quote, harmful to the country, and that this move will allow other major economies to take advantage of these economic opportunities.
Well, this was not a surprise. President Trump has been saying he was going to do this for more than 2 years, but it is still shocking to see the president take this step that really flies in the face of cooperation internationally with other countries on the climate crisis, and also is quite harmful to the United States. Well, I think it shows that President Trump is actually very much out of touch with what's happening in the United States. More than 3/4 of the public supports staying in the Paris Agreement. We have businesses and cities and states around the country that have said they're committed to the objectives of the Paris Agreement. They're taking action. We have 25 states now, part of the U.S. Climate Alliance, taking action. The World Bank has found that there's $23 trillion in economic opportunities internationally in developing countries that are signed on to the Paris Agreement. And that's with electric vehicles, with renewable energy, and many other opportunities. So what President Trump is doing is essentially ceding the field, surrendering, and allowing other major economies to take advantage of those economic opportunities. Well, interestingly, I think that China will step into that void on economically. And China right now, just for example, produces 99% of the electric buses in the world. They have 99% at home, more than 400,000 electric buses. They'll take advantage of that and sell buses around the world, while the United States is not part of this agreement that really is the signal about engagement internationally. President Trump is surrendering one of the best tools we have to make sure that all of the countries in the world continue to move forward on climate change. One of the things the United States sought for many years was to have a climate agreement that would apply to all countries, including countries like China, and that everyone would have to take action and disclose what they were doing.
The United States on Monday formally notified the United Nations that it was withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, making the world's largest economy the sole outlier from the agreement. Donald Trump went ahead and pulled out despite mounting evidence of the reality and climate of the climate change, with September the 4th month in the row with near or record-breaking temperatures. The United States presented its withdrawal letter to the United Nations on the first possible date under the accord negotiated by Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. It will be officially out of the Paris Accord on November 4th, 2020, one day after the U.S. election in which Trump is seeking a second term. Announcing the move, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reiterated Trump's remarks in 2017 that the agreement imposed, quote, an unfair economic burden on the United States. Pompeo said in a statement, quote, the U.S. approach incorporates the reality of the global energy mix and uses all energy sources and technologies cleanly and efficiently, including fossil fuels, nuclear energy, and renewable energy. According to a State Department official, the United States is still planning to attend this month's COP climate negotiations in Spain, pledging to pursue a realistic and pragmatic model. Pompeo pointed to a 13% U.S. reduction of greenhouse gas emissions blamed for climate change from 2005 to 2017, even as the economy grew. But Trump, who took office in 2017, has also pledged to turn back environmental regulations, seeking to block California from setting tighter standards on car emissions and moving to let states set their own standards on existing coal-fired power plants. A number of states, notably California and New York, have taken the lead in fighting climate change. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, warned subpoenaed witnesses, saying that not showing for a deposition, quote, will only further add to the body of evidence on a potential obstruction of Congress charge against the president, after John Eisenberg, Trump's deputy counsel for national affairs, and Robert Blair, an assistant to the president and senior advisor to the acting chief of staff, did not appear on Monday morning before 3 House panels conducting the impeachment investigation.
Both of them defied congressional subpoenas and refused to appear for their scheduled depositions, as has been the case with other witnesses who have done the same thing. This will be further evidence of an effort by the administration to obstruct the lawful and constitutional duties of Congress. I would also say, and we expect the witnesses who have been subpoenaed to come in this afternoon at White House instruction also to be no-shows. This will only further add to the body of evidence on a potential obstruction of Congress charge against the president. I will say this, it's quite obvious and we fully expected this. We have seen a series of shifting, ever-changing rationales for this campaign of obstruction.
White House lawyers suspected of involvement in the Ukraine scandal refused to testify Monday in the congressional impeachment investigation of President Donald Trump, as 3 other witnesses were also expected no-shows. John Eisenberg, Trump's deputy counsel for national security affairs, defied a summons to appear before the 3 House panels conducting the investigation, a sign of renewed stonewalling by the White House as Democrats pressed to take the inquiry into a new public phase. Trump said early Monday he felt there was no reason for witnesses to answer questions by investigators, in particular about his call with his Ukrainian counterpart that is at the heart of the probe. Trump said on Twitter, quote, "What I said on the phone call with the Ukrainian president is perfectly stated. There is no reason to call witnesses to analyze my words and meanings. This is just another Democrat hoax that I have had to live with from the day I got elected." Eisenberg is reported to have been on the July 25 call. At least 4 national security officials raised concerns with Eisenberg about Trump's dealing with Ukraine before his call with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and immediately after it. The Washington Post reported this last month. Investigators are seeking greater access to officials with knowledge of Trump's efforts to pressure Ukraine into investigating one of his chief political opponents, Democrat Joe Biden, who is running for president in 2020. Robert Blair, an assistant to the president and senior advisor to the acting chief of staff, was also due to appear before investigations at 9:00 a.m., but did not arrive. Trump's senior associate counsel, Michael Ellis, and White House Budget Office Associate Director for Energy, Brian McCormack, were due for afternoon depositions, but gave no indication that they would appear. The Trump-Ukraine scandal came to light when a complaint by an anonymous whistleblower who works in the U.S. intelligence community was made public in September. Trump said his Republican loyalists have repeatedly pressed for the whistleblower's identity to be revealed, despite laws protecting government officials who raise alarms about alleged wrongdoings, and for him or her to testify. Several current and former diplomats and officials have corroborated the essence of the whistleblower's complaint, that Trump pressured Ukraine to investigate Democrats. In other news, National Security Advisor Robert OBrien warned against intimidation in the South China Sea during an address at the ASEAN summit. Several Southeast Asian leaders snubbed the meeting after President Donald Trump decided not to attend a regional summit in Bangkok.
Or the big countries should not bully other countries. We talked about the South China Sea, and the fact is that there are claimant countries that have oil and gas and mineral and fishery resources in the South China Sea. That those resources belong to those countries and to their kids and to their grandkids and to the future of the ASEAN countries, and they should not be intimidated into giving those up just because another country may be bigger or stronger. We don't think we're a meddler, and we always come where we're invited. Unlike some other countries, we like to be invited in. We think those disputes ought to be handled peaceably. We don't think they should be handled through intimidation or through maritime militias or by ramming ships or by surrounding islands. And that's just not how things should be done in the 21st century. Those are things that, that's like, that's conquest. Those are things that happened hundreds of years ago, and it shouldn't happen between neighbors in Southeast Asia. So together with Japan and Australia, the United States launched the Blue Dot Network. That network will be kind of the infrastructure equivalent of the Michelin star rating for restaurants or hotels. And infrastructure projects that receive the Blue Dot, that'll be like a seal of approval. President Trump has invited them. He'd like to spend some time with them. He's invited them to the United States in early 2020 and was able to pass on both his greetings to them. He knows many of these leaders personally. He speaks with them on the phone. He's been to Southeast Asia several times over the past couple of years.
Several Southeast Asian leaders snubbed a meeting with U.S. officials on Monday after President Donald Trump decided not to attend a regional summit in Bangkok. Just 3 leaders from the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, showed up to the session, along with a host of foreign ministers. Trump has been accused of turning his back on Asian allies for pulling out of a major trade pact, as fellow superpower China pursues its own deals and investment projects in the region. Washington did not send top officials to the weekend ASEAN summit, instead dispatching Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and National Security Advisor Robert OBrien. Monday's address from O'Brien stood in contrast to earlier ASEAN meetings, which had all been attended by most heads of state. In lieu of Trump's physical presence, O'Brien read a letter from the president inviting, quote, the leaders of ASEAN to join me in the United States for a special summit in the first 3 months of next year. In attendance was the Prime Minister of Thailand, which is hosting the summit, along with the leaders of Laos and Vietnam, next year's ASEAN chair. The summit, which closes on Monday, has been peppered with statements from leaders rallying against protectionism amidst fears of dragging global growth, made worse by the U.S.-China trade war. A senior White House official said Trump, who attended the 2017 ASEAN meeting in Singapore, Vice President Mike Pence went to the one in Manila last year, could not come this year because he was busy with campaign events back home. China's premier and the leaders of India, South Korea, and Japan all made an appearance at meetings on Monday, although none of them was expected at the U.S. ASEAN summit. In other news, the Thousand Oaks Community Center provided shelter for the Morea fire victims in Southern California. Eagle News correspondent Winverly Rivera spoke to some evacuees and staff at the center.
After a series of consecutive fires in Southern California, there is another fire that broke out called the Morea Fire in Santa Paula. This affected about 9,412 acres of land.
All these people were brought here because their neighborhood was being cleared by the fire department because the fire is getting too close.
The fires are getting tiring. I've lived out here for 23 years. The first 21 years we had one fire. In the last 2 years we've had a fire each year. So I don't know what's going on, but it's becoming an uncomfortable place whenever the wind comes up.
Well, you asked me how I feel about folks impacted by this particular incident or similar incidents. And the Caneo-Reckon Park District is an independent special district to provide rec, park, and open space services to the community. And one of the things that we provide is community centers. And so it feels really good to know that in the community's time of need, we have the kind of places people can come to take shelter. And we have really excellent staff that help folks get out of harm's way.
This is the second year in a row that our park district has been providing shelters for people in fires. And it's really nice to see the community come together. Everyone on our staff has been so awesome, and everyone with the Red Cross just working together to provide all these people with a place that's safe to go to get away from the smoke and the fires.
Edison took the power down as a precaution while they're cutting a tree down that could have taken them out for a long time. So we have no power at the center, so we had to temporarily run little generators and cords so they have temporary lighting and some basic stuff to charge phones and whatnot and get them through the night. Keep checking and adding fuel every couple hours to keep them running, and that's about it. We use them for this all the time. That's what their job is, so they can, they're meant to do this.
I am Winverly Rivera, coming to you from Santa Paula, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Winverly. That is today's Eagle News. Join us again tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I am Jennifer Polintan, and I am 1 with 25.